A warm greeting to all of you. Welcome to Rise Up, a channel sharing knowledge for comprehensive self-development through great books. Victor Hugo once said, "When fate hands us a lemon, it's up to us to turn it into a sweet lemonade." The Hunchback of Notre Dame is precisely the sour lemon Victor Hugo used to make us a drink of fate. Yet, its taste is anything but sweet. It is, in fact, filled with bitterness. Drawing on the Greek word fate, Hugo crafted this masterpiece as a tragic tale. The Hunchback of Notre Dame shatters the dream of radiant love, making us realize there are 3 essential truths about love that we should understand as early as possible. Over a century has passed, and in the literary world that has never lacked for masterpieces and renowned authors, one book remains firmly in the top 10 world masterpieces. The classic romantic novel The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The author is the greatest French literary giant of the 19th century, Victor Hugo. The Hunchback of Notre Dame tells a story of Beauty and the Beast that has been widely cherished to this day. Over the last century, how many versions of the Beauty and the Beast story have emerged? I'm not sure if this tale will bore anyone, but please set aside the romantic plotline between a beauty and an outcast for now, because The Hunchback of Notre Dame is far from a simple love story. It's more like a painting of the real world, capturing the strange inner thoughts of humanity. In The Hunchback of Notre Dame, we see the contradictory facets of life: morality and desire, ugliness and grandeur, struggle and helplessness. Through Esmeralda's 3 romantic relationships, the author creates a vast mirror reflecting the obsession, selfishness, and greed within human nature. There's a saying, "Love is simple, but people are complicated." How can we develop a more complete perspective on life, love, and relationships? Perhaps we should read and understand stories from classic works depicting the reality of humanity to bring clarity and light into our own lives. As the psychologist Adler once said, maturity is not about understanding everything, but about seeing through the nature of people. We need to realize that behind love lies our true nature. Reading this book allows us to see the raw truths of life, to perceive the realities within relationships from different angles, and to gain wisdom on how to love and live in this world. Underneath that skin may lie thousands of masks. In the square of Notre Dame Cathedral, amid resounding cheers and flickering firelight, a young and beautiful girl dances rhythmically to the beat of the drum. Her name is Esmeralda. She earns her living by dancing. Esmeralda radiates a passion for life that makes it hard to believe that she's destined for a life full of tragedy and hardship. When she was very young, Esmeralda was kidnapped and taken away from her loving mother. She grew up in a life of wandering, constantly on the move, yet she never once cursed her fate. On the contrary, Esmeralda became warm-hearted, kind, and beautiful. Many men pursued her, but Esmeralda gave her heart solely to Captain Phoebus. Their meeting was a classic case of the hero rescuing the maiden. In Esmeralda's mind, Phoebus was the prince on a white horse, wielding a sword of righteousness. So deep was her love, so intense her feelings, that she was willing to fulfill Phoebus's every request. Even when he called her out to the outskirts in the middle of the night, she never hesitated. One day, when Esmeralda went with Phoebus to a small inn, the happiness and sweetness of the moment made her swoon, and she confessed, "To be your wife would make me so proud." But to her surprise, Phoebus responded coldly, "Things are fine as they are. Why marry?" The truth was that Phoebus was only infatuated with Esmeralda's beauty. He held no true respect for her. When Esmeralda pressed him further, a shadowy figure suddenly sprang out from the darkness, stabbing Phoebus and fleeing. Seeing Phoebus writhing in pain in a pool of blood, Esmeralda fainted. But when she awoke, she bore the full weight of blame. In a ruthless trial, the law demanded she confess and sentenced her to death. Instead of seeking to defend herself, Esmeralda was more concerned about Phoebus's safety. However, even as she was led to the gallows, she received no word or rescue from Phoebus. In reality, Phoebus was unharmed. After learning that Esmeralda was wrongfully accused, he chose to ignore her plight and leisurely went on a holiday with other women. Tragically, until the day of her death, Esmeralda could not realize that the ideal lover in her heart was actually a selfish, greedy, and dishonest man. There's a saying, "The heavens and earth may be measured, but the human heart cannot be foreseen." Do not use your own feelings to gauge the heart of another. Do not use the brief time fate grants you to test love. And do not think that by loving someone sincerely and wholeheartedly, they will automatically reciprocate in kind. For in love, too many are skilled at deception, hiding their greed and selfishness. No matter how deeply you love, never place your entire life in someone else's hands. Always leave yourself an escape, a path forward. Behind passionate love lies utter selfishness. At Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, there was a renowned priest named Claude Frollo. Despite being young, this vice bishop was highly talented, knowledgeable, reserved, and earned the church's trust. He was seen as a symbol of near-absolute asceticism. Whenever he heard the rustle of a woman's dress passing by, Claude would immediately pull his hood down to cover his eyes. Even when invited by a royal princess, he hesitated and refused to meet her. What people admired most about him was that Claude was born into a noble family, yet remained modest, simple, and dedicated to helping the poor. Like Quasimodo, a disabled child abandoned and so hideous, no one dared to approach him. Claude defied others' opinions, took Quasimodo into the church, raised him, and made him a bell ringer. Or Gringoire, an orphaned, vagrant child who lived in poverty on the streets. Claude not only helped him, but personally taught him to read and write, enabling him to transform from illiteracy into a poet. Victor Hugo praised Claude for having a compassionate soul. However, at the age of 35, this admirable priest accidentally saw the beautiful Esmeralda, and he was immediately captivated by her graceful dance and large, dark eyes. Claude was trapped in the mire of love and couldn't escape. The ascetic beliefs he once held now crumbled instantly. But despite everything, Esmeralda disliked Claude and always tried to avoid him. Claude became so despondent that he could only stand at a distance, secretly watching from the bell tower to soothe the pain of his unrequited love. Not long after, when he heard that Esmeralda was about to marry, Claude was consumed with rage. Terrified and anxious that he would ultimately lose her, he incited the hunchback Quasimodo to kidnap Esmeralda in the dead of night. Unexpectedly, a knight appeared to rescue her and capture Quasimodo. This knight was none other than the unfaithful womanizer, Captain Phoebus. It was also Claude who, in disguise, planned to stab Phoebus, frame Esmeralda, and conspire with the judge to sentence her to death by hanging. Claude thought that, faced with such a murder charge, Esmeralda would surely accept his rescue and agree to be with him. However, to his surprise, Esmeralda remained cold and refused to heed Claude. Having exhausted all efforts yet still unable to win her heart, he finally shouted in a frenzy, "Then die! If I can't have it, I will destroy everything. If I can't possess it, no one else will either." This was Claude's true nature. He personally sent Esmeralda to the gallows. From priest to demon, Claude's essence mirrored the saying, "A flower blooms with two faces. Life lies between Buddha and the devil." In reality, everyone possesses both dark and light, good and evil, which coexist within. Even when everyone around considers someone virtuous, that person can still harbor malicious thoughts. In the hidden corners of the soul, there always exist shadows of greed, anger, envy, and vile desires. As Mom once said, baseness and greatness, evil and kindness, hatred and love can coexist in a single heart without excluding each other. So when does evil arise? It appears when a person cannot live with or accept their true self and cannot treat the present with kindness. In truth, Claude always lived under the facade of a guardian of souls. but it was all an illusion. He had long grown weary of a life of prolonged abstinence, which only fueled his delusion and malice. Especially after meeting Esmeralda, the desire within him ignited uncontrollably. Claude was madly obsessed with possessing her, but due to his position, he could only suppress it. Gradually, this unrequited love transformed into a dark thought. If I can't have her, I'll destroy her. Behind passionate love can lurk a heart of extreme selfishness. Behind a dazzling appearance may be a pitiful illusion. When a person fails to control their desire to possess, whether that possession is of feelings or material things, sooner or later, the veneer of benevolence will be pierced and they will be engulfed by a rising darkness. The person you love may not be beautiful, but they must be kind-hearted and sincere. The monster of Notre Dame, Quasimodo, had only one eye, a hunched back, and crooked legs. Due to his ugly, frightening appearance, he grew up in scorn, bullied by others. Society's indifference and people's coldness made him cold, cruel, and rude. He was like a walking demon, never treating anyone kindly, except for his adoptive father, Claude. And then he met Esmeralda. At first, Quasimodo kidnapped Esmeralda under Claude's command, but the kidnapping failed, and he was caught, beaten, and sentenced. The next day, Quasimodo knelt in the square. He was beaten black and blue, with blood flowing across the floor. He gasped for breath, pleading, "Please give me some water." But all he received were jeers, insults, stones thrown at him, and even his adoptive father, Claude, turned his back and coldly walked away. Only Esmeralda stepped forward, despite her previous doubts, smiled, and poured water into his mouth. The cool water soothed his bitter throat and warmed his lonely, cold heart. Quasimodo shed the first tear of his life. From then on, with Esmeralda, he was no longer distant and cruel, but became a protective, loyal guardian for her, with a pure and faithful heart. When Esmeralda refused Claude's help and was about to be taken to the gallows, Quasimodo took advantage of a moment when no one was paying attention, leaped down from the bell tower, defeated the executioner, and helped her escape. When the people woke up, Quasimodo had returned to the church and declared her under the church's protection. According to the rules of that time, Notre Dame was a sanctuary where even a criminal could become a saint once inside, and no one could harm them. The two were safe, but on the condition that they would not step outside, or they would be punished. While in Notre Dame, Quasimodo accidentally discovered Claude's evil intentions towards Esmeralda. Although he was afraid of his adoptive father, he stood up and said, "Unless I'm dead, no one will touch Esmeralda." But even though he risked his life to save Esmeralda, loved and cared for her meticulously, Esmeralda still turned away, frightened by this ugly monster's appearance. Then, Esmeralda was deceived and expelled from the church by the Archdeacon Claude. She was captured in public and then hanged. After Esmeralda died, Quasimodo personally killed his adoptive father, and then went to the morgue, tightly embracing her corpse and dying alongside his love. Who would have thought that someone so ugly, scorned and despised by others, could be so kind, sincere, and pure towards the one they love? A writer once said, "In the evil nature of humanity, there is also goodness and beauty. In polluted and dirty air, there is the fragrance of flowers. Just as through the gaps in dark clouds, there is sunlight. In muddy, foul, filthy swamps, there is still a pristine white lotus." A person with a cold face, seemingly aloof and selfish, can still contain a tender and sincere heart. It's just that people often focus too much on their evil and negative aspects, overlooking the glow of kindness. Beauty standards are always biased and tend to follow the majority. 2 years later, people found the skeleton of a deformed man next to Esmeralda's skeleton. When they tried to separate them, the two skeletons turned to dust at the same time. The brilliance of the Hunchback of Notre Dame lies in its message that beauty seen with the naked eye is not necessarily true beauty. A person with a beautiful appearance but filled with evil thoughts is merely a walking corpse. In contrast, beneath an ugly exterior, there can still be a gentle soul and a kind heart. So remember, the person you love may not need to be beautiful or wealthy, but they must be kind, compassionate, and sincere. Character is the first quality that should be prioritized in choosing a lifelong companion. So what is true love after all? You may wonder, no matter how sincere Quasimodo was with Esmeralda, his tragic end is the same as the evil Claude's. In the end, neither of them could be with Esmeralda. However, if you look at it from a broader perspective, you might no longer think so. In reality, the world in The Hunchback of Notre Dame can be divided into two realms. The first realm is the secular world, the very world we live in now. It is a society ruled by power that is also in decline. It is organized by people through numerous rules and regulations, creating countless biases. The most dominant figures in this realm are Claude and Phoebus. When the abbey's abbot is close to the emperor, Claude, a respected and ascetic bishop, is an important figure at the emperor's side. Meanwhile, Captain Phoebus, the commander of the king's guard, has many worldly desires that belong to people in this realm: lust, drunkenness, lies, and selfishness. When problems arise, he retreats and accepts his fate. He has no choice but to marry into the noble family of his peers. When the novel speaks of Phoebus's marriage, he says, "This is a tragic ending." Or, as we often say, life is so hard. Is it really hard? Or do we have the shadows of Claude and Phoebus within us, chasing power, ambition, and filled with selfishness? The naked truth about life and the very nature of humans in the realm you live in is something we should deeply reflect on. In contrast, two people with souls of gods, like Quasimodo, who is sincere, and Esmeralda, who is kind-hearted, do not belong to the mundane world. They are not bound by its order, which leads to their tragic end. Though they may have been lost in the secular world, they can still shine in the second realm. This is the kingdom of gods, also known as love. In fact, these two gods could not unite in the painful world of the mundane. Esmeralda was truly afraid of Quasimodo, even though he loved her so much that he would betray everything, his benefactor and even the Church of Notre Dame itself. But in the end, they still united in the spiritual world. Therefore, when the door to the spiritual world was opened by humans, and the winds of the mundane world blew into it, the bones of these two people intertwined and immediately turned to dust. Even though the secular world rejected them, they remained a spiritual light, representing true love. This is something worth dedicating our lives to, understanding what it truly means to love. In the decaying secular realm, both Claude and Phoebus live in delusion. This emptiness drags them down into the abyss with tragic consequences. But in the realm of love, the emptiness, the disappearance of Esmeralda and Quasimodo, continues to rise forever. Their death is the end point of the conclusion, but also the starting point. The author wrote, "Paris speaks in the daytime. Paris breathes at night. Paris sings when the bells of Notre Dame toll." But who rang the bells? It was Quasimodo. That wonderful and beautiful sound of the bells soothes the body and elevates the soul. This is love, the bell of God for the people of the world. Let us listen and awaken, escaping from the ambitions and selfishness of society and humankind. Only sincerity and kindness can give wings to love. Learning how to love is learning to return to the starting point. Thon Nyen Han Tu, a great Zen master, once said that there are 3 stages in a person's life that almost everyone must experience. The first is, when you see a mountain, it is a mountain. When you see water, it is water. Next, when you see a mountain, it is not a mountain. When you see water, it is not water. Finally, when you see a mountain, it is still a mountain. When you see water, It is still water. Humans are born without a discriminatory mind. When you first begin to perceive the world, you see mountains as mountains and water as water. But as you go through the ups and downs of life, what you see may no longer align with what you think. The more unwilling you are to believe in what you haven't seen, the more prone you are to doubt. This means you begin to create distinctions and judgments. At this stage, you see the mountain as not a mountain, the water as not water, and people as not people. Indeed, there are many who can act like vicious beasts, deceiving, fabricating, having great ambitions, and being exceedingly selfish. How many people are like the characters Claude and Phoebus? Only when you have gone through the trials and tribulations of life, experienced both the warmth and coldness of the world, and constantly learned and practiced, will you be able to finally cross the river of life and return to the starting point. At that point, you will truly appreciate the scenery before you. At that moment, when you see a mountain, it is still a mountain. When you see water, it is still water. There is a saying, "May you cross 1,000 miles, only to return to the heart of a child." These 3 stages in life are also true for love. Reading The Hunchback of Notre Dame, through the truth of love and the nature of humanity, you will see all 3 stages reflected in it. That is why this novel is not merely a pure love story. Understanding it allows you to escape the emptiness of the mundane world and live at a higher level from the energy of love. I hope both you and I can truly appreciate the author's words. Of all God's creations, the human heart emits the greatest light, but sadly, it is also the source of the deepest darkness. Whether it is light or dark, whether it is beautiful or ugly, I believe you already have your own answer. Please, do not let the darkness of selfishness born from desire, greed, anger, and ignorance cloud your eyes, living in the illusion of seeing a mountain as not a mountain, seeing water as not water. The era the author describes is hundreds of years old. However, even today, how many people truly understand how to love? The sad truth is that some people spend their entire lives without ever grasping it, forever living in the illusion created by society and humankind. Love is returning to your true self, back to the starting point, because originally, you were always an angel capable of reuniting in the most sacred love. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who need it. Give me a like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to catch the latest videos. Once again, thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.